Hello, Revere, and welcome to the Revere Veterans and Community Show. Today we have three special guests, actually, but two of them are from the greatest generation. But before we start, I would like to introduce Mrs. Ann Raponi, who put all this together, who made the arrangements to get these up. And Ann is a former school committee woman. Ann, thank you for bringing them up. Just give us a little brief, just mention their names, and then I'll take it over.
It is certainly my pleasure to have arranged this meeting, and we all reside in the same facility called the Jack Satter House, and that's how I found these fine gentlemen, and that's why we're here. And it was my pleasure to make the arrangement to get them here.
Right, Ann?
And I'm glad you invited them.
Right, and it's a pleasure because these are two of the greatest people from the greatest generation of World War II, and they were on in the Normandy invasion. And I would like to introduce the elderly gentleman on my left. His name is Bernie Glassman. Bernie, welcome to the Revere Veterans and Community Show.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service, because you are from the greatest generation. And Mr. Glassman, thank you for coming on
Rosenthal.
here.
Dave Rosenthal.
I mean, Dave Rosenthal. I'm sorry. Thank you for coming on here.
It was our pleasure.
And you are also from the greatest generation. So we're going to start with you first, Bernie, because you're the oldest one here. Age, can I mention that age?
Go ahead.
Folks, 94 years old.
98.
98? I'll get this thing right yet. God bless you, Bernie.
Thank you.
Tell us a little about yourself, where you took your basic training to start with.
Well, I come from Chelsea, Massachusetts. I was drafted February 17, 1941.
The war wasn't even on yet.
No, I was a draftee.
Oh.
And I went to Camp Devens, Massachusetts. And from there, I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I got my basic training in 6 months, and then I was transferred back north, and I went to Governor's Island, and there I met General Eisenhower.
Right.
We started the First Army Headquarters.
So you knew Eisenhower before he even got overseas to become the head of the commanding for the invasion?
Well, that's where we started the First Army Headquarters.
Oh,
He was there. We started, the whole thing started the First Army there, in Governor's Island in New York.
Good. And you, Mr. Rosenthal, I hope I got it right this time. Dave, tell us how you first got into, when you first got into the Army.
Well, I first got in the Army, I was drafted when my brother was getting married, and they announced it during the ceremony, war was declared on Germany that night. So I said, well, I want to do something for the country. So I went to welding school, and I worked on aircraft carriers, building ships for the Army, and then after that I was drafted. And
all right, excuse me, Dave, just one question, if I may, sir. You got into the Army, was it December the 7th, 1941, or 4 days later when Germany declared war on America?
No, I wasn't in the service when they declared war on Germany.
Oh,
no.
It was after that?
After that.
Okay.
Then I got after that. Then I got it. I was drafted, and then I went to Fort Devens, and then we went to Texas, to Camp Barkley, Texas, and that's where we had our basic training. And after our training there, we went to California, out in the desert, and it was so hot that we had to sleep at nighttime and sleep at daytime and do our training at nighttime. And then from there, we went to England, and we stayed in England, I don't know, about a few months, and then we went out of England about two or three times on dry runs over the channel, over to Normandy there, and they were waiting for the weather to be good. And finally they said, this is it. And everything let loose. The Navy was bombing, the airplanes were coming and flying. You could see the planes were like touching each other. There were so many of them. But we heard that the Germany had superiority over us. And when we jumped, I was in a 80 millimeter mortar, so the infantry was just in front of me. We were support of them. And we were climbing down the ships when they said let loose, and we got into the water, onto the invasion boat, and I was carrying the tube for the 80 millimeter mortar, and it got caught on the cable of the ramp, and the water was just was bubbling with the bullets, and the bodies were all over, like touching each other. There wasn't one here and one there. Thousands of them. And we finally got up there, and the hedgerows were there. The Germany made hedgerows out of it, so the tanks couldn't get there. After the tanks landed, they couldn't go because the hedgerows, they couldn't get over. So the Navy was bombing that for hours and hours. And then we kept moving on, and the tanks started coming in, and artillery started coming in. But the bodies were all over that water. It was just like I don't know what you would call it, and bullets were flying.
What infantry division was you?
Huh?
What infantry division was you part of?
I was in the 90th Division.
So you landed at Utah.
Utah?
Right.
Well,
That's what it was. Because,
okay.
And you were in the 29th?
Yeah, 29th Division.
Tell us about your story, because you landed at Omaha. And before we go, both of you came in at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, after we landed in Omaha, I got off I was on a transport boat.
Can I ask you one question, Bert? What was it like crossing the channel? I mean, wavy, seasick, or smooth?
It was rough. It was rough. The waters were rough there in the channel.
It's only 20
And it
minutes.
was dark.
Yep.
And while we were getting off the transports, we saw a lot of dead bodies all around us, a lot of blood. It was dark. We saw a lot of fellas, like he said, we saw a lot of limbs and legs all over the place. It was atrocious. The
Right,
worst.
because they showed it the way the Germans had those 6 guns up on the hill.
Yeah.
They pinpointed at your landing boats as they were coming in, your landing boats.
Yeah.
And then you guys jumped down and they spread out all over so you all wouldn't be shot at one time.
We couldn't go. The tanks couldn't come in to help us, or artillery, because
Right.
they couldn't get over those mounds at the hedgerows.
And then the Germans were on the trees.
Right.
And they all had camouflage uniforms on. The camouflage blended in with the trees, with the leaves. And that's when I saw all the action. And I saw a foxhole, a German foxhole there, and I dove right into it, and I stayed there until it got dark. It's all written up in there.
Right.
And I waited till it got, after it was dark. Then I came out of the foxhole, the German foxhole, and then all my comrades were looking for me because they were hungry. They wanted to eat, and we set up a tent, and we had sea rations for supper, and that was it. That was the beginning.
When you say sea rations, can you tell us exactly what it consisted of?
Well, it was we had potted eggs,
Yep.
beef stew, and all kinds of vegetables, and potted eggs.
You was also a chef, I believe, with General Eisenhower?
And I was a chef. I cooked in the first Army headquarters under General Eisenhower.
How was it like with him?
Very nice. He was very nice. General Marshall was with him all the time. When they used to come every day, they used to come in from England. They used to cross the channel in the morning and go back at night. They never stayed there with us at night. They always used to fly back to England.
Oh.
But they were there every morning. And then I met General Bradley there too.
Yep, Omar Bradley.
And I took a shower one night in one of the tents. And who was in that tent? General Bradley and me. We were taking showers together.
Very interesting. Now, I got to say one thing. The Germans had 6 pillboxes on the top. They were aiming down at you people. Now, there was 5 landings, really, at the invasion of Normandy.
Yeah.
Omaha and Utah, and then there was the British at Gold, the
That
Canadian.
was General Montgomery. That was his outfit.
Right, the Gold. Then there was Juno, which was the Canadian, and then there was
That's right.
Sword, which was also the British. So they didn't keep the Allies really together. They had them separated. The
Right,
Americans
right.
on Omaha and Utah, and the British over there. Right.
They were in a fishing, an English place. They did that where the French used to do all their fishing. I forget the name. It's a French name there. That's where they were all the time. And then we got together. We combined.
Right. Now, I want you to tell me the cliffs there. There was cliffs that were 100
yeah.
feet. How did, the way I understood the way they scaled them, the Rangers that got up there dropped down the ropes, and
Yeah.
they had like that little ladders, and the guy was climbing
Yeah,
up.
rope ladders climbing
ladder.
down the boats.
But the Germans were picking them off too as they were going
Oh,
up
yeah.
there.
Oh,
Of course.
definitely. Right there. You could walk from one ship, Navy ship, to another ship. There were so many. It wasn't just one ship or two ships. You could walk, and the sky was full of planes, but
Right.
the Germans had the planes too, and they were like touching each other. So many. What I understand, I talked to a gentleman one day in the store, and it says I was on the invasion of Normandy. He says I was there before. He was a bombardier, and they were bombing before we started
Right.
to land. Yeah.
To soften them up. Not only were you bombing them, but the ships that were out in the water, the battleships, the cruisers, were shelling them too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
General Eisenhower was on a cruise ship. The name of the cruise ship was the Augusta. It's a cruise ship, the Augusta. He was on a cruise
What was
ship.
the name of your ship when you came over there, you remember?
From the States
From England, over.
over here. I was on a transport.
Oh, that was the transport?
Transport boat.
You too?
The number of the boat was 92. I even remember the number.
That's pretty good at your age.
I remember the number, 92.
That's very good. Okay. Now, I got to say one thing before we start. We usually give an American flag to people that come on a show. And these are from the Revere Veterans Service under the Commissioner Nick Brewer. He's in charge of the Revere Veterans. So on behalf of the greatest generation, I'll give you, since you're the oldest one, I'll give you first. No offense, men. And Bernie, I mean Dave, excuse me. God, I think I'm the one that's getting old. Dave, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Now, before we go on any further, I have a couple of plaques here. And you're going to do the reading. Can you see pretty
Yeah,
good?
sure.
Okay. I want to hold this up, and I want you both to hold these up. And when you do, I hope the TV camera focuses in on both of you. These are plaques that I send away for. They come from a company. I hope I got the address here. Excuse me, I want to give the company credit. It comes from Joe Van Nort, N-O-R-T. They're out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. They donated these when I spoke to them, and they says, we got these things made, give them to one of the veterans that come up, so thank you. This is for you. A D-Day. I think I got yours right here.
Yeah.
Bernie,
Okay, you want me to show it?
I want you to hold up, but more than that, I want you to hold this up too and read it. So if you can focus on these TV, we would love to have you on the veterans, right? That's Bernie holding it up. And there you are, and that's Dave. Now, Bernie, it says over here, I'll read the low part, but I want you to read the back part. Over here it says, we will accept nothing less than full victory.
Can I lower this?
Yep.
Sure.
We will accept nothing less than full victory, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Here's the message Eisenhower wrote to you people, so why don't you read it, Bernie?
You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty. Loving people everywhere march with you, in company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts. You will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of the Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. That's one paragraph.
Right.
You know, you want me to read the other?
Read the whole thing.
Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well trained, well equipped, and battle hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940 and 41. The United States and the United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air defense has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
General Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Dwight. What's his middle name? I can't make it up.
Dwight
David?
D.
Dwight David Eisenhower.
Right.
Good show.
Yep.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you, Bernie. You could have. I couldn't have done it any better. That's why I
Thank
let
you.
you
Good
do
luck,
it.
Bernie. You did a good job.
Now I have to ask: did any of you two get into Paris?
Yes, I did. I had a pass. I had a, you know.
I don't mean a pass to get to fought your way into
no,
Paris to liberate. How far did you get on once you landed on the beaches? I mean, to push into France. What was it like heading into?
When I was there in Paris, I was there on pleasure.
Right.
I went to the Eiffel Tower. I was on like a 2-day leave. The war was still going on, but
Oh yeah,
because we were pushing it back already after Paris. They were retreating like mad before we got to the Battle of the Bulge. But I was in Paris on pleasure, so I can't say anything bad about it.
One of you two was in Aachen, Germany. Which
I
one?
was.
You was in
I was
Aachen.
in Aachen.
But you wasn't there on pleasure. You was there. As a
I slept in a cellar there with rats, and a German dwelling there, having a cellar there. Rats going all over us in Aachen.
That was the first town I think that the Allies.
That's the
took.
first place we hit was Aachen.
Now, I got to ask you, the German population, because you know this was a bitter war. Did they welcome the Americans there, or put out the white flag so they wouldn't be shot at?
I never saw that. I wasn't in that area. I didn't know.
But when you went into Aachen, what were the people like there, the German people?
I was there in the dark all the time. I was never there at night during the day.
I-
We were there at night all the time. I
Well,
was
what did
always in the dark there. I never saw daylight.
So you never saw daylight.
No. I was all when it was dark. Then we used to go in there and do our duty. We do.
Oh, you were not. In other words, you didn't capture the town and so you could occupy it. You went in,
we
came
went-
back.
yeah, okay.
Went in, came
Yeah,
back.
right.
And what'd you do after Aachen? Where did you go up after?
And then we started from Germany. We were on our way to France and Belgium.
So you were heading up north then?
Yeah, we were going towards the. Then we had what we called the Battle of the Bulge. I was there too.
You was in the Battle of the Bulge? too?
Sure, I was there.
That's where they killed the Americans at Malmedy? Is that the place where they tied the Americans' hand where they were captured?
That's
Yeah,
right.
that was a
They
big
did
fight
job.
there.
And they asked.
Was you on that too? Dick?
They asked one general there to retreat.
Oh, that was, he said nuts. That was
Nuts.
the colonel. That was a colonel at the
And he
time.
was his name was.
Was it Howie? No, was
no.
it?
What was his name? McNulty or something. General McNulty.
No, yep.
Yeah.
And
he
the
said
German
nuts.
Nuts, right.
And then afterwards, while I was there, you know, I was in the kitchen, and things were going to be getting bad there. We were starting to retreat already. They went in the kitchen. They gave all the cooks guns. I said, "What's this?" They give me a gun. I said, "What the hell's the gun?" I said, "This is not for me." Anyways, we had to retreat, and we got up. But thank God, things happened, and that was General von Rundstedt.
Yeah,
was
he
the
was
one.
he was the
General von Rundstedt was the general
in charge of the German army.
Germany.
Right.
And they said nuts to him.
Right, he was an equivalent to Eisenhower.
Right.
Because
Remember that name, von Rundstedt?
Of course, General von Rundstedt. But before I get to you, Dave, I got to say one thing. Under General von Rundstedt, and I'm glad you mentioned it, was another general. His name was Erich Marx. And he was in charge of the German army, the 84th Division, when you people landed at Omaha and Normandy. He notified Hitler to release the troops that were in Calais at the time, handling the British and the Canadians there, to get them over to take care of you. But Hitler said that what you were doing was just a ploy. The real battle was where the British and the Canadians were. But it's a good thing they relied on Hitler, because otherwise there would have been more hellfire on there.
You know who saved us in the Battle of the Bulge? You know who saved us?
No.
General Patton. He came up from the south, and the Germans
That's right.
The Germans feared him. They used to call him Blood and Guts Patton. He had a nickname, and they were afraid of him. They knew he was a smart general, and by him coming up, he saved us. He saved us in that battle.
I got to ask you, I heard this, I don't know if it's true, but maybe you people could help me on that there. When the Germans were firing the heavy shells, I'm not talking about the bullets, but the real bruises, and a couple of them would not blow up because they were duds, the Americans would say, those were made in Czechoslovakia. Did you ever hear that expression?
No, I didn't. No.
because they used to think that the Czechs who were working for, well, they didn't want to work for the Germans, but they had to, would make duds so they wouldn't blow up when they would come over there.
Yeah.
Now I want to get to you, Dave. Tell us about your experience going up into.
Well, we landed on. They finally said this is it, and we climbed down from the ships onto invasion barges, and when we landed in the water was up over our neck,
Right.
and the soldiers were all over the place. The water was red. It wasn't natural, you know, and we kept going. We tried to get we were about 80 feet from land, from water to land, and we get up there and we kept pushing. We try to get so the tanks could come in and they could bring artillery in because they couldn't get over the hedgerows, and the Navy was bombing the hedgerows before we even got there, and we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. I didn't take my shoes off for about weeks and weeks, take my shoes off, and the only clothes we had was a raincoat. And we kept going and going and going.
Bernie, I got to tell you, this is a picture of you when you were 28 years old.
Right.
From Chelsea, Mass.
Right.
I want you really haven't changed that much, really, when I look at it. Your hair got a little grayer. I want you to hold this up, and I want the TV. There you are. Look, right behind you, Bernie.
Yeah.
Look at that. Turn around for a minute. There you are, right here. Look how
Oh,
nice you
my
look.
goodness.
Take a look. Can you see it over there?
Yeah.
There you are, Bernie. You were a handsome dude.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Right. And there was also a picture before we go of, well, you didn't give me a picture of you young, but you and him as veterans are taken during the war. Do you have that picture blow up there?
Yep, there it is.
There it is. There you are.
Yeah.
Bernie is which one of the two is the better looker, would you say, Ed? Would you say it's a tie?
It's a tie.
It's a tie.
Smart going.
Right. By the way, I got to tell you.
We never figured any of this would happen, you know?
What? Coming
what
on
we're doing, what we're doing.
First of all, let me tell you, this is a Revere TV community show, and it's called the Veterans and Community. That means you don't have to be a veteran, but you can be a community veteran doing good things.
Yeah.
But who else would be better to have the people that were in actual combat?
It's actual.
Yep.
I was in
You got the real McCoy here.
I know that. We just had the flag day that we just recently on there, talking about flags. And by the way, it's because it is that you people were out over there to give us the freedom so I could have the freedom. Remember, it was people like you that fought for me because I went after you.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, we were all young. Well, 28. How old were you when you first went in?
I think about 24.
20.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was a compulsory draft. You had no choice.
No.
I was drafted.
Definitely.
Right. I remember when they picked the numbers out, they had
158 was my number.
158?
Yeah. They had a fishbowl.
Right. Right. I remember watching that.
I won that raffle. 158. Then I was drafted.
Right. What number were you?
Huh?
What? Do you remember your number when you were drafted?
No.
I see. I remembered. How do you like?
You're all right, Bernie.
I got to tell you, as luck would have it, or I shouldn't, well, to me it wasn't luck. To me it was bad. I tried to get in at 16, and I passed the exam. I was going to get in. The sergeant that was sitting there, his name was Sergeant Schlossmann. I guess his father come from Germany too. But he was my next door neighbor, and he knew how old I was because we used to get the birthdays and everything. So he told me next year you come back. But I had written a note and signed my mother's name to it and everything. So, because at that time they didn't ask for your birth certificate, really. I mean, if you wanted to join, and at that time, it wasn't like it is today, 18. At that time, I was 17 during World War II. If you were 17 years old and you wanted to join, they took you.
Yeah.
And I took my basic in Fort Dix, New Jersey. Now, which one of you two was in Germany?
I was in Germany.
He was in Germany.
Okay, give us some of the towns that you visited there, because I was stationed there too, so we can all intermingle.
I was in a German town. It was that was in Buchenwald. I was in Buchenwald.
Tell us what it was like
Well,
there.
when I got there, I met the first thing when I went there, and I started to cry.
I would too. Before you say Buchenwald, can I say something to you?
Yeah.
I used to speak to people that came out of the concentration camps because I had to help them get relocated. Yeah. There was a lady.
There was a lady in charge there.
Ilse Koch. Ilse Koch.
You know what she did?
She made lampshades out of the
Right.
skin.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Right, I remember.
It's written in there.
Right. Tell us something. Now, I want you to tell us about
Well, when I got there, I saw, and they said there was a woman in charge of Buchenwald. I said, no. And then they said she was a no-good bastard.
Pardon
She
the
made-
expression, Bernie. They used to call her the bitch of Buchenwald.
Whatever they could.
What's her name.
They took skin from,
Right.
from the Jewish souls, and they made lampshades. Lampshades.
Yeah.
And then, when I was already in there, I met a couple of Jewish prisoners there. And when they found out I was speaking Jewish, they all congregated, and they mobbed me. They wouldn't let me go because we already invaded that camp. The Russians helped us get rid of them there. The Russians were there, and that's why they surrendered there. And we saw German soldiers, when they saw the Russians were coming, they tried to commit suicide. The Jewish prisoners were looking for them, and they're bringing them back in stretchers. A lot of these guys,
Yeah.
Germans, they slit their wrists. They wanted to commit suicide. They didn't want to live because they knew the Jews were going to kill them. And that's how the Jews got freed. And while they were there, and I saw what they were wearing, I went back to my outfit, and I saw some Jewish guys that I know there. And we got clothes. We made bundles of clothes. We brought back clothes to Buchenwald, so they had clothes to wear. And
People don't realize that, Bernie, but you know, in the concentration camps overall, 15 million people really got killed by the Nazis in the concentration camps. 6 million happened to be Jews. The others happened to be communists or homosexuals.
Well, I was there with all the Jews mostly.
Right.
Buchenwald was bad.
So was Dachau. So was Auschwitz.
Yeah.
All these German
Well,
concentration.
they took the Jewish people to Germany, put them in the street, and burned fires with them.
Right. There was a saying that we used to say when I was over there that not every victim was a Jew. Not every victim was a Jew, but every Jew was a victim.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
true.
how we used to say.
That's
when
true.
We were,
That's true. All right.
That was our expression over
Yeah.
there. I used to myself interrogate the DPWs at that time after the concentration camp. When the Americans came in, they used to tell me some of them were nothing but skin and bones, like pencils. And when they would try to pick them up to help them,
They were too weak.
exactly, they would try to not force feed them, but feed them while they were laying on the stretcher. And the first thing they gave them was water. But the saddest thing one of them told me is when he went in, I think it was Dachau and Buchenwald, and I think it was one of Buchenwald too. There were little kids there that were 3, 4 years old that came out of those camps too. They would have been gone to sleep too.
No.
Yeah.
Terrible. No, I cried when I saw that. I really did.
So how long were you overseas over there after you landed on D-Day, roughly, approximately?
Well, the war ended in April 1945.
May the 8th
40
is when it officially started.
Yeah, was it 44? 45.
45.
That's when I was there right to the end.
Oh, so you were right there.
I went through the whole campaign. And I was in St. Lo. We had the battle there, the
Yep.
Battle of Bulge.
Right.
And then from there I went to Paris and then into Germany. And then the war was over, and then I went back to, I was coming home already. I was in Sweden somewhere, and they put us on a boat and they sent us back home. The war was over already. And I got discharged in Fort Banks in Winthrop.
See, you were there during the war. I got in the year after the war, in 46.
I don't understand why they didn't blow Paris up. They didn't blow Paris. They didn't.
I could tell you on that one. The German general that was in charge got a direct order from Hitler to blow Paris up. To blow Paris up. But he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to have the conscience to kill all the innocents. So
Yeah.
he rescinded the order. He didn't give the order out to the troops.
No fighting
But
in
Hitler
Paris.
did want to do it.
Yeah, no
I
fighting
didn't want
in
to.
Paris.
I was even.
First of all, people don't realize that. Maybe you people might know about it. During the war, or near the end of the war, when the Russians were coming in from the east, and you coming in from the west, a lot of the German peoples who were getting bombed by the British and the Americans day and night went to live in the subways. Hitler, like 50 to 100,000 in Berlin. If any of you, was anybody here in Berlin?
I was never there.
Okay, I was there. There was a place there called Alexanderplatz. Alexanderplatz. The people went down there. Hitler gave an order to keep the Russians from coming through the tunnels, to flood the tunnels. The guy told him there's people down there. He says, I don't give a hoot. Flood the tunnels, but he wouldn't do it. That's the kind of a guy he was. And the people, you know, he wasn't even a real German. He was born in Austria. And look what he did to a country. At that time, Germany, before he got into power, was one of the smartest countries in Europe, really, when you think of it. Technical-wise, scientific-wise, they were just brilliant. It didn't take much for him to, for a nut to come in and do what he did. So what do you think?
Yeah.
So after you got out of after you left Germany, what did you do then, Dave?
I didn't get to Germany.
Well, wherever.
I got hit about 4 months, 5 months. I got hit. We were in a.
Oh, so you got the Purple Heart then?
Yeah, we were in a foxhole for the night, and we're ready to take off in the morning. And the Germans opened up with mortars. What I had to come right in, and I got hit in the spine. So I had to stay down there until about 5 o'clock at night, and we had to crawl up over the hill because the Americans pushed the Germans back. And I went to the hospital for months, and then after the hospital, they put me in inactive duty. So that I was put on a tank retriever. You know what a tank retriever is? Yep. I was put on that for a few months, and then I went to ordnance and drove a 2.5-ton ration truck. And that's why I didn't go further in. I was in active duty. Wasn't in duty like that part.
By the way, I don't know if you remember, while you were overseas, did any of you ever hear of Field Marshal Keitel?
Keitel?
Yes. Did you hear him?
Vaguely, vaguely.
Keitel sent a letter to General Eisenhower that he wanted to surrender to the Americans in the West. That would have been you and you. And Eisenhower told him now that you have to surrender unconditionally. That means you got to surrender to the Russians, to the British, to the French, and then to us. What they were trying to do was to split up the Allies at the time. And the funny thing about it, they didn't do too bad, because when I was in Berlin in '46, there was a Berlin blockade on. I don't know if you remember the Berlin blockade, where the Russians closed down, that you could only fly things in, you couldn't transport things in.
And that was in '46?
46.
Really?
Yep. That was our ally in there.
Yeah.
Yep. So we used to fly stuff in over from Tempelhof Air Base to feed the people of Germany. No, they had to eat. I mean, you know,
definitely.
we had to eat too.
Yeah.
And of course, they would shut off the electricity at 11 o'clock at night, so we had no heat. So they flew in coal. And let me tell you, I got to give those pilots credit. When they came in between maybe 10 feet on each side between the buildings. They only had about 15 to 20 feet clearance. Some of them didn't make it. They crashed their little airplanes. Well, there wasn't little, but they used to drop chocolate candy to the kids that would stand down below, and they used to call us the chocolate soldat because they'd come in and drop the candy.
Well, what
down.
the French people did before we got there, they buried food in the orchards, into the ground. So after the Americans pushed the Germans back, they had food to eat. They had it buried in the ground. And we were on trucks moving forward. They were yelling at us, you know, they was freed already, and we were throwing them our rations. They didn't have any food, or we the K rations and stuff like that.
I mean, I hate to say this, but the Nazis at that time, the army, they were vicious. They had a scorched earth policy.
Oh yeah, they didn't care for nothing.
Right. When Heinrich got killed in Czechoslovakia, they wiped towns off like Lidice. When they got killed in France, Klaus Barbie, who was another beauty over there, he did a job on them. And when they went into Russia, they were hectic there. And then they complained when the Russians went into Berlin and the Russians were giving them a little payback. They were yelling and screaming.
The Russians did a job on them.
Well, they deserved the job.
Oh,
what they
do
did
a
in the
job.
Soviet Union. They went in there, they killed the cattle, they burned the hay that they couldn't use. If the Germans could use it, they took it. But if they couldn't use it, they made sure you don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, when we took the Germans prisoners, they were so happy that we captured them. They used to tell us how happy. Thank God you took us, because they were afraid of the Russians.
Right.
And the.
That's why a lot of them ran from the Soviets, the Soviet zone, or what the Soviet was crossing the Elbe. The Elbe River.
The Americans and the Russians were going there with squeezing, you know.
Right.
And
the Russians did a job on them.
Well,
but they lost a lot too, the Russians.
The Russians lost over 20 million. Over 20 million.
Yeah.
They did.
I remember, you're not talking about that, but I remember General Patton, Tank Man. I never can forget him. As they were squeezing and moving, and he's with his dog on his convertible, and he's up front. Come on, come on! I can just see him, and he was up before the troops. And then he'd be way up there, and then he'd get a hold of
He
the
was the
troops
best general they
with
had.
tanks.
He was
Come
the-
on, let's go.
Dave, I got
Bring
it.
that out.
Huh?
Bring that out.
Oh, he was a tough guy.
Oh, he was.
I got
was
it.
a-
Right. I
He
want to
wants
ask you
talk,
too
he
about
wants to
something.
talk about Patton.
We are. We're going to talk about Patton now. But here's what I want to say. You were there when Patton slapped the soldier. I mean, that soldier that he had slapped, and then Eisenhower pulled him out of the ranks. But he was in England preparing for the invasion, even though he had nothing to do with the invasion at the beginning, by making up those false tanks, those false airplanes. Tell us something
Yeah,
about
well,
that.
no, I don't know. I didn't hear anything, but the tanks were more important to him than men. They meant more to him than
Who,
the
to
men.
Patton?
Yeah,
He didn't care for nobody or nothing.
just the tanks. That was his baby right there.
The only thing he got a raw deal when he went to the hospital and he slapped a soldier
Right.
in the face, and they sent him back to Washington, and they demoted him or whatever they did, and that was the worst. Why do it for a little guy? I don't care. He's a human being. Don't get me wrong, but what you're doing, your life is not your own. And he slapped him, and they sent him, a big general like that. They sent him back to the States.
Well, he claimed that soldier was demoralizing the other soldiers that were in the area there because of his cowardness. And he did call him a coward. So, you know, but what he did that people don't realize, that he was the one that set up those phony tanks that you could blow up. You remember, like you could blow up a tank with a balloon, like a balloon?
I don't remember
They
that.
had them on the ground, so when the Germans would send their spotter planes over, and they were opposite the shortest distance, I believe was between Calais and the Channel in England, that 20-mile
26 miles.
26 miles, thank you. That 26-mile gap, they showed that the Germans would think that the invasion was coming at Calais because that's where all the tanks and phony planes and everything were lined up. So he threw them off guard, and that was his job, and he did a very good job.
Oh yeah, I mean I just couldn't see. It's bad to slap, but he only slapped. He didn't kill him or anything like that, and they did that to
That's
a
why they
four-star
hated him.
general.
I'd like to say one
Demoted
thing.
him.
Yeah.
Dave, this is General Eisenhower. Did they have that picture of General Eisenhower on the screen, if they can blow it up? Yeah, right behind you. Standing right here. It's hard to see on that picture. If you look at this general that's right behind him here, that's Montgomery right there.
Oh, is that Montgomery?
Right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's General Montgomery standing right there.
You
Thank you.
You had one of those hats.
Right. Now, Montgomery and Patton, I think, were not too friendly. I bet there was a lot of friction between the Allies. I mean, the heads of the Allies.
Yeah.
The English.
Matter of fact, they got one of his tanks near my daughter's house in Beverly.
Oh, that's right. He lived
There's
there.
a tank there
Yeah,
now.
the daughter or somebody lived there.
That's
my
right.
my daughter doesn't really know him.
Patton
know
has
her,
a
but
son.
They know her. You
that
know
lives,
what I mean?
Excuse me for interrupting.
Go ahead.
Patton has a son that lives in Beverly, and his son is still living there. I don't know, maybe he died already, but one of his sons lived there.
I know one of his sons was also a general, I believe.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Matter of fact, my daughter knows his daughter. I don't know how well, but she knows of her or something. My daughter lives in Beverly, and I always see the tank, but I never pay any attention. But it's Patton's tank, you know.
when I was a kid, many moons ago, I used to hear like generals about it. For example, General Mark Clark of the Fifth Army. in
Remember,
Italy.
Fifth Army.
Fifth Army, right?
Yeah, they were in Italy.
Yep. And if you ever saw a picture of Mark Clark, you swear it was a kid that was leading the army because he had a young-looking face on him. I remember.
We
that.
had the 1st, 3rd, 7th, and 9th armies in Europe. The 5th Army was in Italy. That's how
right.
I remember that.
Did you ever get to Italy with them?
I was never in Italy.
How about you, Dave?
No.
Nope.
I was in Europe. That's where I started.
I was in Austria. I was in Germany. On the outskirts of Poland, in a town called Baranovici. I had to go deliver something there at one time. So it was just the tip of Poland. Like you went into Aachen,
Yeah.
right across the border. Baranovici, I remember that because when you're a kid, you remember these things. And I just had to deliver a package. Actually, it was a pouch that was tied to my hand. I had to drop it off over there. So that was it. So, folks, I want to say to each and every one of you, I want to thank especially you, Ann, for bringing them up here. I want to thank you again.
You're very welcome.
Bernie, I hope I'm going to get the names right after all these years. Bernie Glassman, thank you for your service. God bless you.
Yeah, okay.
98 years old. I hope you live to be 198.
Thank you.
Dave Rosenthal, I want to thank you, sir.
Thank you
for your
very much. It's a
service.
pleasure. It was
And
a
it was
pleasure.
an honor. It's an honor not only for me, but for the people of Revere and the people of America to have you come up here. So thank you. Thank you again.
We can go now?
One minute, I got to finish off here.
All right.
I know.
My daughter has to get home.
Let me ask you a question. So nothing to do with this.
Go ahead.
What is Cuba still there? Are we still having trouble with Cuba?
Oh, all the time. They're still there with the communist. I mean, we're not having trouble with them now like we had when Kennedy was president, where they had the Russian missiles there. But, I mean, they're not our friends. That I can guarantee you. But we do have Guantanamo prison camp over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, as long as he's still alive, there won't be any peace. The minute he closes his eyes, everything will be all right.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. So I want to thank all the veterans that are out there. Thank you for your service. God bless you all, and especially our great country,
It
the
was our
United States
pleasure.
of America. God bless you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.